Okay, welcome everyone in today's webinar. I wish you all a very happy International Women's Day. We are waiting for our participants to arrive. So let's just leave a few more minutes for this. I would like to remind all of you that there's a chat box, so please feel free to introduce yourself, say hi to other participants in the webinar. There's also a Q&A box where you can send in your questions as well. Towards the end of the webinar, the speakers will take your questions, so feel free to send them to us. We wait another few minutes for everyone to arrive, and then we will start. I can see that Borok already started the chat. Feel free to join in. Mavis here. Hello. Happy International Women's Day to everyone, of course. It's a busy day. Alicia, welcome. Maybe wait another 1 or 2 minutes, and then we will kick off. It's great that you are all here. It's a busy day for everyone, of course. I understand. But I'm glad that you are spending this morning with us. Okay. Shall we start? So welcome everyone in today's webinar. My name is Dalma Fabian, and I coordinate FEANTSA Women, which is a Europe-wide community of practice on women's homelessness. And we are relaunching our community this year with this webinar. And we are planning to host many more during the year, mostly concentrating on featuring best and promising practices in supporting women who experience homelessness. So please do get in touch with us and share your ideas on what you would like this network, FEANTSA Women, to do on women's homelessness. Before I give the floor to our panel of speakers, just would like to link into the theme of this year, International Women's Day, which is inspiring inclusion. It's an important theme that FEANTSA fully endorses in our work. To inspire us today to understand and value women's inclusion, we have invited 2 speakers who will discuss with us their work around the role of advocacy in addressing women's homelessness. We have picked the theme of advocacy for this webinar to celebrate the achievements in the work around women's homelessness, but also to remind ourselves to continue pushing for women's homelessness to be seen as a priority when addressing homelessness, and we continue for calling the development of specific and gender informed services for women. We also know that participation and co-production are vital for any gender-informed services, so we will hear more about that also in a second. So we have decided to discuss all these achievements, also the challenges we face in our work, and also the future priorities with our panel today. So I will stop my screen sharing now and give the floor to Luísa. Luísa, are you here? Maybe Luísa hasn't joined us yet. Then maybe Isabel, would you like to be then the first? Or maybe I just quickly ask. Okay. Then I suggest that Isabel, you go first. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much for having me. My presentation is short and sweet, so I'll kick it off now. Oh, managed to lose. There we go. Can everyone see that? Perfect. Okay, so thanks so much for inviting me here today to talk about the role of advocacy in ending women's homelessness. My name is Isabel Langdale. I work for Homelessness in the National Practice Development Team, and I'm leading the project on ending women's homelessness. So I'll just give you a brief insight into kind of what that work involves, what we've been doing over the last few years, and some of the kind of key learnings we have developed for thinking about how do we kind of progress an understanding of women's experiences of homelessness, and how do we make it more of an urgent topic of conversation. So the first stage of Homeless Link Ending Women's Homelessness project was a grants programme. This is recognising that there is a real lack of funds in the women's homelessness sector in the UK. We needed to, as a first stage towards getting proper gender-informed care, understand that funding is the primary barrier for services, and we needed to support the distribution of funding to women's and homelessness services who were already kind of trying to do something and trying new things out to support women. So we distributed funds to 29 different charities over a couple of years. Obviously that was during the pandemic, which necessarily impacted service delivery of this grants programme, but it also came at an important time in being able to grow our understanding of the extent to women's homelessness. So in the UK, we had the Everyone In programme, which involved an expectation on local authorities, local councils to ensure that everyone experiencing homelessness had a place to stay. And this was a massive programme of hotels and accommodation support for people experiencing homelessness, and particularly rough sleeping in the UK. And what this revealed is when we didn't have the kind of restrictions on support that we usually have, which can limit women's ability to access services because they're more likely to be hidden while homeless. When that was removed, they did see that more women were coming forward and more women were homeless than they thought. So it's an important moment for us to understand kind of the extent of women's homelessness in the country. And thankfully, we had distributed funding to women's charities who were able to then provide support to women who were in these new forms of accommodation. So some learning kind of emerged from that. And this was developed and produced into an insights and impact report that was distributed in 2021. And that brought together some of the learnings from those 29 different charities. So it kind of brought that together in a series of both national policy recommendations, but also local practice recommendations for the homelessness sector in the UK. This then led to the Ending Women's Homelessness Project. The Ending Women's Homelessness Project is the second stage of this grants programme, and this was designed to kind of try and support the homelessness sector to embed the learning from that first stage and adopt more gender-informed approaches. What we've done in the last year and a half, the first kind of main product of this has been a new gendered lens framework for homelessness services. So this is a piece of work which was co-produced with women with lived experience of homelessness, and also brought in together and tried to summarise all of that learning that we've developed over the last few years about what works. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel at this point. Women's specialist services have known for a very long time what are the key things that work for women experiencing homelessness, and the homelessness sector has also started to develop this. So we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to consolidate that learning and also work with women with lived experience to develop it and produce something which was accessible and useful to the sector. So that was published last month, and I'll make sure to post a link in the chat. And in this piece of work, we made sure to have artwork from women with lived experience. That was also kind of a way for us to sort of have those conversations about how gender impacts on people's experiences and how a gender-informed approach, what that looks like for people. So we used art workshops to develop those ideas, and then also included the artwork in the final product. So this is one of my personal favourite pieces you can see on this screen here behind the front cover, and it says, "Don't talk to me like a child, give me respect." And I think they're really powerful images. The other thing we did was establish a women's housing movement. So we know that from experience that women's specialist services have a real expertise, and we need to be bridging the gap between the homelessness sector and the women's specialist sector. Funding and competitive funding can often kind of create divisions, but that's of no use to anyone. And we know women's experiences of homelessness is a multifaceted issue, and unless we're bringing in the domestic abuse sector, unless we're bringing in organisations that have a specialism working with sex workers, then we will not be responding effectively unless we're doing things in partnership. So this women's housing movement is designed to bring together lots of different people working in lots of different sectors who are all thinking and working and developing best practice on women's homelessness, and trying to kind of develop shared goals that we can then work towards. And one of the shared goals was the National Women's Census. So in London, in 2 years ago now, forgetting the time, so I think 2022 was the first pilot in London of a women's census. And in the UK, we have a very particular method of counting homelessness, which is called the rough sleeping snapshot. So it's counting rough sleeping in the UK. And we've known for a long time that it doesn't work for women experiencing homelessness. Women are much less likely to be seen, quote unquote, bedded down, which is the definition of what they expect. And they will only count people who are bedded down in very particular ways. So we know that women aren't counted according to this method of homelessness. And because of that, local authorities and other areas are often hamstrung when it comes to applying for funding and making sure they're generating services for women, because they don't have the quantitative data that means that government will listen and understand the differences. So they developed this pilot, and then the women's housing movement, this collaboration between the different sectors, identified this as something that we wanted to roll out nationally. So we supported in another pilot phase, which happened last year, 2023, a national women's census. So we got 14 other local areas across the country, including large cities and large rural areas, to try the women's census. And it has already kind of had quite an impact locally, being able to inform local strategy and contribute to the development of new services for women. So we are looking to see how that will develop in the future. We're hoping to get some central government backing, but it's the election year in the UK like everyone else. So I think we're going to try and be a bit limited in that. But we've got big ambitions for where this is going to go. I'll briefly just go into what we learned, but I think we're going to discuss that more in the question and answers, so I won't make it too long. But I think some of the key things we've learned about advocating for women experiencing homelessness is that what we're trying to do here is make a problem visible. So that can be contentious. People don't want to know that there's more work that they have to do. There's an additional problem that is not already acknowledged. So making things visible in the data, providing strong evidence that women's experiences of homelessness is necessary to then insist that the local government and national government do something about it. Unfortunately, we need kind of all those different forms of evidence to be able to kind of build a really strong case that this is a problem and is something people are experiencing and does need a response. The other thing we've learned is advocacy work is always more powerful and effective when women with lived experience are leading it. And this exists across the board. So making sure we're platforming women's voices and I think that's something else that came across in the artwork is women felt like they weren't listened to. And it's making sure that women feel at every stage of the process listened to and they have an ability to advocate for themselves. And we're giving them the platform to advocate for themselves. So that's a really important aspect. And finally, obviously, as I've discussed, funding landscapes can make effective partnerships between the women's and homelessness sector difficult, but they're still essential. And funding can often be the solution. So thinking about joint funding solutions, joint projects, how can we design that from the outset? So yeah, those are just a few thoughts, but I'm sure we'll get into it in the discussion after. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Isabel. That was a great introduction to your work on advocacy. And as you mentioned, the involvement of women with lived experience as a key to any successful advocacy or any work around women's homelessness. I'm very happy to introduce Luísa, who has joined us now. I heard that this morning Lisbon, it was raining in Lisbon and the transport was a bit chaotic, but we are really glad that you are here. And so the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, good morning, everyone, and a happy International Women's Day. My name is Luísa Gomes, and I am here with you today as a representative and vice president of SOMOS Mulheres. We are thankful for the invitation from the European Federation of National Organizations working with homeless to be here today and talk about homeless, human rights, and advocacy and lessons learned from effective advocates. Who are SOMOS Mulheres? We are a peer-based organization for social inclusion that aims to advocate for the rights for women experiencing homelessness. We are different women with different experiences and stories, but with equal drive towards women empowerment and eradication of women's homelessness. This drive is especially strong because almost every member of our group comes from lived experience of homelessness. This idea of creating a peer-led association for women experiencing homelessness has been nurtured through our own recovery path in framework of Crescer projects, namely Housing First program. Crescer as parent association was crucial in establishing the SOMOS Mulheres in the first place. In 2021, through Civic Europe funding program, Crescer helped and supported our launching. Okay, this idea of creating a peer-led association for women experiencing homelessness, Crescer, having worked with vulnerable populations, people experiencing homelessness, migrants and refugees, people dealing with drug use-related risks and harms, surviving violence, etc. For 20 years, have a deep knowledge of the territory and a meaningful network of local partners, and they push us for forward by making space for our active role. Our objectives were defined during the first couple of months of 2021 in weekly meetings and debates. We want to engage women who experience or have experienced homelessness. We want to create a safe space for them, advocate for their and our rights. We want to organize sensibilization actions with different relevant actors, particularly local, but also develop local and international partnerships. To be able to work towards these objectives, it was necessary to work on capacity building first. Again, through Crescer support, we had and continue to have our weekly meetings as well as workshops and training sessions on different topics such as gender-based violence, sexual and reproductive health, etc., etc. We think unity give us strength, as one of my colleagues expressed it beautiful. And to learn a bit more about us and our work, I will invite you now to look at our short film. Agora o vídeo.
Vamos, mano. Vou-te apresentar a SOMOS. A SOMOS nasceu tipo Robin dos Bosques, na rua. E cresceu agora em casa, com teto. Hoje a SOMOS tem teto. Isso que eu tenho a dizer.
Quem Somaia?
Somaia somos.
E somos juntas.
Somos juntos.
Tá bom? Obrigada. Sempre juntos, mais nada.
É
verdade. Somos amor.
Quando ela me explicou a causa da associação, qual era o objetivo ou os objetivos da associação, eu aderi logo, sem pensar, porque é uma das minhas grandes ambições, é poder ajudar as pessoas que estão a passar por aquilo que eu já passei.
Já tinhas essa missão?
Já, é uma missão.
Sentias isso?
É uma missão. Olha, hoje, sexta-feira, dia 13, mas não é dia de azar, é dia de sorte. Porque a SOMOS andou a fazer o bem, a distribuir os kits às mulheres sem abrigo. Missão cumprida, uma das missões cumpridas. Podemos ter muitas mais missões.
Somos felizes!
E que as mulheres confiem em nós.
Somos estamos aqui é para ajudar as mulheres, ver as necessidades delas, ir em encontro com as necessidades delas e estamos aí, fazer o melhor, cada dia melhor.
É o básico?
O básico, sim, é o simples.
Diletos. Ai, está. Diletos. Já está toda, Gi? Já está tudo.
E a cair dela?
Não, estou a segurar isto. Eu fui buscar um kit, um shampoo, uma pasta de dentes, escova de dentes e uma mochilazinha, uma toalhinha. Entrei, ela foi lá, ficou. Ela abraçou-me, um abraço quente, senti o sol nos braços dela. Senti mesmo só o calor neste dia, assim tão frio.
Mas penso que esse tipo de coisa se impressiona realmente, né?
Bastante.
Quando a pessoa não está na espera de receber nada, aquilo que eu não comprei, aquilo que eu não pedi, está nas minhas mãos.
É gratificante.
Sim.
É muito calor, é muito humano.
Está sem família, outro fome, outro cheio. Não é?
Gente, aquela pessoa até pode não confiar na gente da primeira, segunda, mas vai a terceira, vai coisa. Há dias que elas não estão aí, estão a ressacar ou estão com problemas. A gente não pode desistir, sempre em frente, continuar a batalhar e conseguimos. E conseguimos, é essa diferença que esta associação vai fazer, vai batalhar, de para onde der, tem que ir sempre, lutar pela pessoa, o ser humano que é, pelo ser humano que é, não é a pessoa em si, é o ser humano, está ali, o ser humano.
Declaro-nos africanos pela presente escritura constitui a partir de hoje e por tempo indeterminado uma associação que adota a denominação Somos Mulheres, Associação pela Inclusão Social, tem sede no bairro Quinta do Cabrinha 3, /F em Alcântara, Lisboa, código postal 1300-906. A associação é uma instituição de caráter privado, sem fins lucrativos e tem como objeto advogar pelos direitos das mulheres em situação de sem-abrigo e expostas à violência em contexto de rua. A associação era constituída a regular-se-á pelos estatutos constantes do documento complementar, que é esse, que conhecem perfeitamente e
A gente quer pessoas com garra. Pessoas que acreditem porque a gente acredita, sempre está nisto, é a mesma coisa, isto é verdadeiro, está a acontecer, e está a acontecer agora, e a gente precisa deste agora mesmo precisamos, pessoas voluntárias e com garra, para nos agarrar e a gente agarrar a elas.
Já passamos muitos anos discriminadas, é a nossa hora de lutar por todos os nossos direitos.
You, Luísa.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for the video and for all the work. It is indeed very inspiring that you have set up a peer-led organization, and I quite like what you said about how you are all different women but with equal rights. I would like to just maybe start our discussion. And today's theme is advocacy and how advocacy can help to transform policies and practices so that they are more responsive to the needs of women experiencing homelessness. And I ask the first question to you, Luísa.
Okay.
What are the advocacy goals of SOMOS, and how you are, in your view, what is key for an effective advocacy on women's homelessness?
Ok. Somos Mulheres. Our advocacy goals are dividing for important groups. The first goal is amplifying voices of women experiences homeless. Then we have community awareness, which includes changing public attitudes towards women experiencing homelessness, creating a space for dialogue and mobilizing people for the cause. Another important goal is reaching better politic awareness through questioning existing policies and influencing policy decision making, and participating in agenda setting and proposing alternative policies. Finally, but not less important, is the advocacy for a strong peer rule. We defend the importance of peers in the technical teams, for example, in the outreach teams, and lived experience is a very important skill.
Great, thank you. I will come back to that later when we discuss the importance of participation and co-production. But thank you so much. Isabel, Homeless Link has been advocating to ending homelessness for a long time, but you are working on women's homelessness. How is this advocacy is different than addressing than advocacy in general on homelessness? What are the key challenges that you are facing when you are advocating for women's homelessness?
I think it's a really interesting question. I think I started talking about it in my presentation, which is about making something visible, which is generally less seen. And I think that's the really important part of it. In the UK, there's a big focus on rough sleeping and ending rough sleeping. There's a kind of central government have a clear kind of objective when it comes to this. But the definition of rough sleeping is really, it's quite restrictive and does mean that women are excluded from this definition of rough sleeping. So while you might be able to normally advocate for ending of homelessness through these rough sleeping initiatives, what you have to do when it comes to thinking about women's homelessness is challenging the definitions themselves. So saying, we know that you're trying to end homelessness, but that just doesn't work for people that are unseen. And that can be a really challenging argument to make, because you're saying you're contending that the definitions they're using are wrong. So you kind of have to start back from the beginning again and say, right, let's think, how is this different? How can you pay attention to women's experiences? And I think it's that that attention, the economy of attention, right? So you need to raise awareness from the beginning, and when you're raising awareness, also do so in a way that challenges the stigma that is attached to women experiencing homelessness. You know, we know that women are judged for not conforming to those gendered roles of being in the home, and so experience more judgment for that. So you need to start by raising awareness, and when you raise awareness, you also need to kind of pivot those expectations. And as you know, Luísa has already exhibited so powerfully, the best way to do that is to actually talk about and present women who are experiencing homelessness and have them lead that conversation, because they are the ones to do so with dignity, and who can challenge those expectations by asserting their own dignity and their own right for respect. So I think that's a really important difference.
Thank you. Absolutely. And you already mentioned some of the important issues and difficulties in relation, and obstacles in relation to this advocacy work, or the difficulties for women to be included. Luísa, in your work, what are the difficulties that you experience in your work as a peer-led organization? What are the obstacles that you face in your work?
Well, at the same time, this path is not free of obstacles, for sure. And I would like to explain some of them. First, there is a complete lack of knowledge on issues related to the women experiencing homelessness, which is directly connected to the lack of adequate policies and political focus to address it. And at the same time, this is connected to the lack of the peer work recognition and training. And this is what we would like to see changed, and we are working toward it. At the same time, there is a lack of empathy from women to women, which is special, visible in moral judgments from women with unorganized life towards women experience homelessness. And finally, what you can hear a lot in the streets is how wasting time is wasting money, because when come to the meetings, sometimes they cannot win the money they need for day by day, for the day. Okay. But to go past these obstacles and for successful advocacy plan and strategies, a good network of partnerships and alliances is a key ingredient.
Yes, absolutely true. And it leads to my next question, how partnerships are key in any successful advocacy strategies on women's homelessness. And Isabel, you already mentioned how important is it to work with women's organization, so that the homelessness sector and the women's sector, sex workers organizations or domestic violence services, they join forces to and work together. Do you have good examples of this practice? For instance, I mean, the most obvious one is the joint trainings, but maybe, and you also mentioned the joint funding. And what are the lessons learned from these partnerships that maybe can be replicated elsewhere?
Yeah, definitely. It's something I'm trying to highlight as much as I can as examples of where it's done really well, which is quite a lot. Thankfully, like, they're really emerging. I think people are really recognizing it. We highlighted a case study recently of a service which has unfortunately now lost funding. So this speaks to the context, but it existed for a few years, and it was a partnership between a buy and for specialist organisation for Black and minoritized women in Leicester and a partnership between a women's specialist service called New Dawn New Day in Leicester. And this was to deliver a new refuge service for women who had kind of more high support needs. And initially, you know, they were arguing for women's accommodation. They were like, we don't see enough women in services, but we know the need is there. But they hadn't even recognised the extent to which Black and minoritized women weren't seen and supported within women's services. So the partnership between this women's specialist service and the buy and for service called Panagar really led to an increase in Black and minoritized women seeking and receiving support from the women's services in Leicester. And the services kind of speak to the kind of sharing of knowledge and expertise as really being a really important part of delivering that effective support. So the women's service had kind of expertise in delivering trauma-informed support, and we're able to share that knowledge with Panagar, the buy and for specialist service. And the buy and for specialist service had knowledge about how to respond to cultural needs and religious needs, and how to make sure people felt respected and safe in the environment, and also to make sure that it was accessible to different communities. So that was an example of a strong partnership which led to an increase in knowledge between both services. And we see in London, we're having new services for Black and minoritized women as a new service called the Ruby Project, which is opening soon. And this again is delivered in partnership between a homelessness service who has that accommodation delivery support knowledge, a partnership between a women's specialist service who has that VORG knowledge, that ability to to respond to people with domestic abuse, and a partnership between a service that knows and is embedded within communities that respond to Black and minoritized women. So it's those partnerships that making sure we're meeting the needs of everyone. And that's the key. If you're not seeing them, it's not because they don't exist, it's because you haven't got the right partners in place who know how to respond.
That's indeed a quite inspiring example. Luísa, you started to discuss the importance of partnerships. Would you like to add something to it? How is SOMOS feel supported and recognized by women's organization?
Yes, to reach our goals, we understood very early that we should speak out and gain visibility. For we look for partnerships with other civil society organizations, private companies, and individual donors. We produced and distributed an interactive documentary in collaboration with an artist and researcher who accompanied us from the beginning. We gave interviews for journals and newspaper. We collaborated with a local online radio, participated in congress and webinars, collaborated with scientific research projects. Finally, we participated in political meetings and events with local and national decision makers. Here, I would like to especially mention the President of Portuguese Republic and the Minister of Labour, Solidarity and Social Security. Furthermore, we are currently applying for the establishment of innovative responses for the women experiencing homelessness in Lisbon, which would result in establishing of a peer-led outreach team and peer-led drop-in center exclusive for women. Some of them, yes, please.
Go ahead, sorry.
So, some of them we already mentioned it, but here I will highlight for us the most important ones. Crescer as a partner and ally was important for the establishment of the group, but continues to be crucial for bureaucratical assistance, technical competencies, etc. The support is here from the beginning and is still going on. We also established partnership with Mercenaries. They are our partner and mentor in Civic Europe program, and they were essential for training and inspiration for the establishment of the association. Through this year and a half our official existence, we had numerous collaborations and volunteers. We participated in artistic interventions, principally the interactive documentary and an audiovisual installation inspired in our lives and stories. Through these interventions, we meet volunteers and donors, both as private individuals and companies. On different occasions in Congress, we shared the stage with different organizations that have the same or similar objectives and goals. We should not forget the importance of collaboration with different media, radio, press, online, journal, etc., and social media that can help broaden and outreach and make our partnerships and collaboration grow in terms of number and strength.
Thank you, Luísa. You already answered some of the questions I wanted to ask, but it's true that it seems like you have been involved in public debates and policy discussions around women's homelessness, and your work already led to the development of women's services. So that's very indeed amazing to hear. Thank you. Isabel, how are you? You already mentioned a few examples of how you are involving women with lived experience of homelessness in your advocacy work. In your experience, how women's participation and in co-production is different, or what are the challenges, or how you can make participation and co-production gender informed?
I think the key aspect of it is quite similar to other areas of homelessness advocacy. It's just making sure that people are aware of, I guess, who's represented in lived experience groups. I think it's important for us always to remember, you know, lived experience is a really broad range. We're talking about people's lived experience that can mean a whole range of different things. And sometimes when people start to do co-production or lived experience, Bob, the voice of lived experience, you know, you can pick a couple of people that are able and have the capacity to join in. And that means that, while that's fantastic, it sometimes means that certain voices are represented, certain experiences are represented over others. And I think when we're talking about representing women and encouraging the representation and voice of lived experience of women, we're talking about not just women, we're talking about everyone who's marginalized according to, like, who's not a straight white man and who is marginalized in the current debate. So it's thinking about those voices that are marginalized, which might be women, which might be Black and minoritized women. It might be different. Like, there are lots of people who are marginalized in the conversation. So we need to advocate for a broad range of representative voices to be listened to and supported. And that's why I think these kind of peer-led networks are so important, because it is a broad community of people, rather than a maybe more established organization just picking and choosing a couple of people who they feel that they can have attending their meetings. So we need kind of broad-ranging grassroots organizations that represent a really broad range of voices. And from my work, our work, we're in early stages of doing this properly. I don't think we're there yet in terms of our effective involvement. And I think the goal is to kind of reach out and support groups. So, like, we have the Women's Action Group in Bristol, which are a lived experience group. They're really fantastic. They've been involved in various different kind of local government policy development. They've been involved in the development of our work. They're really an active group. And it's about how can we support the capacity of their group to grow? So how, through our lived experience work, can we support the capacity and independence of other kind of peer-led groups or community organizations?
Absolutely. Thank you. Luísa, you are clearly the expert in this area. What would be your advice on the effective involvement of women in our work?
Okay. What's most important for the involvement of the women? Okay, to share the experiences with each other, to share experiences, and try to put in the shoes women. We have to see the world with the women's homelessness eyes, because they see the world differently, and yes, and we have to talk and try to dialogue and bring these women to different kind of life, because they sometimes they want very much, but they can do nothing alone. They need to be helped. That's what I think.
Thank you. It's definitely the strength of a peer group that is demonstrated also in the video, and it's thank you, Luísa.
Can I leave a message from Somos Mulheres. Can I?
Yes, absolutely. That's great. We are all listening.
We invite everybody to effectively look at women's needs and to fight against the stigma about women experience homelessness, and especially with drug use. Use the specific knowledge of a peer for fortify the fight against women's homelessness.
Thank you. That's great. Isabel, do you have a message from Homeless Link as well to our participants?
Oh, a clear message. And I feel like I can't say anything more than Luísa said. I think that's brilliant. I have nothing else to add.
Absolutely. I fully agree. I'm going to have a look at our question and answer box if we have any questions from the participants, and would like to invite everyone to send now your questions to Luísa and Isabel. We still have a few minutes to answer them, so please feel free, either in the chat box or the question and answers box. In the meantime, maybe I take the opportunity to ask what our network, in your view, what our network, the FEANTSA Women, the Europe-wide community of professionals and academics and women with the lived experience and of homelessness, our community could do to help your work. What would be interesting for FEANTSA women, in your view?
Things we can do, but I think the most important is the political will. You have to change the politic mentality is not turn to the homelessness in all the ways, you know. They even don't know the reality. Many of them, we talk of them, and they see, wow, this is totally different and more tragic than we thought. They don't have the notion of the reality, the true reality, and we have to bring them the reality from front of their eyes, for they see how it's hard, how it's tragic for everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a recurring theme that we have to continue raise awareness and so that push for more recognition and visibility, like you both said, of women's homelessness. We are based in Brussels, and we are doing a lot of EU advocacy work, so at the European level, and we would be really happy to have you, Luísa, coming to Brussels and share all what you shared this morning with us, with the decision makers in Europe and members of the European Parliament. So I'm really hopeful that it will be possible, and we are working towards that. So I'm just checking if we have a question in the meantime. To Luísa, yes. How did you get the initial group of women to start working together? That's a great question.
Yes, we started, we are a group of the women with homelessness experiences, and we all meet in the streets. A few years ago, you know, we make sex work, we are in use, in drugs, and we all meet for 20 years. And one day we meet all in Crochet, and somebody talk us about if we want to help the other women in the same situation we were. And if we say all together yes, and then we start to work up from them with Christian help, always with Christian in our backstage.
We have another question from Sarah. She said that in her research on women's experiences of homelessness in London, the women comment on how they don't know about the services that exist. And so not only are women unseen, many women feel that the services are hidden from them. Do you think there's an initial problem of access to services?
Yes. It's not knowledge for everybody. That's why it's so important, the peer rule, the outreach teams, because it's they where they go with the word to get to the women's, and is a special public because we don't believe very in associations. Me myself, it's very hard for me to believe. But when we start to believe and trust, the trust is very important too. We have to get the trust, and they feel safely, you know. So it's the beginning of the work is gain the trust of the women and make them feel want to be helped. Is the most important things for me. And if the knowledge of the services is as our work for the peer rule is the work of the peer rule to take the services to know for them know that we exist.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great to bring the services to
To
them.
the streets.
Yeah.
Yes, because they don't
Where
have
they
time.
are.
When I say that moment, I say that they sometimes think, oh, I'm going there, I'm gonna waste my time, I have to win money. So they don't go. Sometimes we have to give an incentive, a motivations, even financial, for this. So no, you can give 1 hour of your time, please come to know us, and then they come and they start to trust us.
That's great. And are your group is growing?
It's going. We are 7 right now, and we meet all the Fridays. Today is Friday, is a Women's Day, and we have some activities for do. We're gonna see when I have a happy day today.
Yeah,
I hope.
it is. We are definitely celebrating. Okay, I think we are coming to the end of our webinar. Thank you very much for our speakers today for sharing their work and inspiring the inclusion, which is the theme of this year's International Women's Day. And thank you for everyone for joining us today yeah, spending this important day's morning with us, and also reminding us that we have a lot of work ahead of us. Thank you for FEANTSA's communication team for promoting our work on social media, and we are hoping to have more of such webinars this year, so please get in touch with FEANTSA Women, send an email to me, and we are looking forward to seeing you soon in another webinar. Thank you again,
Thank you
Isabel
for the invitation.
and Luísa. It was great. I can see in the chat box that you have lots of thank you messages, and everyone seems to be thanking you or having positive messages. So it's great. Lots of hearts coming up on the screen. So thank you very much, Luísa.
Thank you,
Isabel.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel.
Good to meet you.
Bye bye. Have a nice day. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.